The story of Players Cup 3 starts on a beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon. The birds were chirping, the waffles were being cooked on the waffle iron, the bacon was frying, the little kids were outside throwing footballs around. But I decided to spend that day playing Pokemon for like 8 hours so I could compete in Players Cup 3. Naturally, a lot of work and time went into the team, so if you want to see the team, I do have the link below. It details the team, so if you want to check that out, it's all there. But our story doesn't begin on that beautiful Saturday afternoon. I think the story truly begins a year earlier during Players Cup 1. Due to some really stupid mistakes, I accidentally linked the wrong email, which meant I was ineligible to compete in Players Cup 1. That felt really bad. I was heartbroken, upset, but it only made me stronger. And I trained, and I got ready. And then Players Cup 2 came. After solving the issues that I had with my email and all those stupid sign-up issues I had, I was able to qualify and be eligible to compete in Players Cup 2. But sadly, fate didn't have my back, and I went to Fat 0-2, completely eliminated from the tournament without winning a single game. After that, I trained, and I fought, and I was ready for Players Cup 3. So on that Saturday morning, I wake up determined as ever to win this tournament. Before every tour, I'm always naturally a little nervous, so I woke up, did my stretches, took a shower. I had to be clean for the tournament. I didn't want to be dirty at my computer while I played all day. I set up my recording software, and then I set off to work my magic as a Pokemon trainer. Now, going into the tournament, I had scouted the bracket a little bit the night before, and I noticed one thing that was horrifying to me. My first opponent was named Hero. That is not the thing that was horrifying. The thing that was horrifying was my second opponent, was Audie. Audie was someone who I'd built the team with. His YouTube's down below if you want to check him out. And he was someone that I knew was using the same team, so it was a perfect 6-Mon mirror. Not only that, I realized the night before that I also wrote down the wrong move on Charizard, so I would be forced to run Solar Beam in the tour and not Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands is a really big deal, especially when fighting against Incineroar, and believe it or not, Incineroar is the most popular and probably the best Pokemon in the game, so not having this move would be a giant detriment to my run and could potentially cost me the run, to be completely honest. I sat down on my computer, ready to play round 1, ready to compete, and ready to attempt to take the Players Cup 3 trophy. So this entire tournament is open team sheets. So before every round, I'm able to look at my opponent's team and look at their items, moves, and abilities. And they're allowed to do the same to me. It's all part of the tournament. So naturally, team preview becomes a lot more interesting and also much more extended and a more important process. Since we have perfect information, we're able to make plays and come up with leads and game plans that normally we wouldn't be able to do. So against my first opponent, I saw their team was a team consisting of Thundurus, Clefairy, Charizard, Whimsicott, Venusaur, and Groudon. So this is like a Sun-Mon mirror, except they have Thundurus, Clefairy, and Whimsicott, as opposed to my Porygon, Grimmsnarl, and Incineroar. So instantly, that makes me assume that they're a pretty fast-paced team. It's a fast-paced game plan, and I know that Porygon is going to come up clutch. So for my lead, I decide to go with any good anti-Sun team lead, and I lead with Grimmsnarl and Charizard, because I think that's really good against almost anything they can lead. I can set up Reflect, I can set up Light Screen, I can use Scary Face to slow down my opponents. No matter what happens, I'm in the money. So that lead is just guaranteed a good, safe lead. I bring my Restricted because, come on, how can you play this team without the Restricted? And then I bring Porygon because Porygon looks really good. Since it's a more fast-paced Sun team, I decide, hey, Porygon's good against fast-paced stuff. It sets up Trick Room. Also, Eerie Impulse just completely destroys half the team. The 2 special attackers are extremely weak to it, and this team also has 4 Ice Weaks. So Porygon is no slouch in terms of damage, just even with Ice Beam. Also, no Ice Resists, so there is that. So Porygon looked incredible, and I knew I had to bring Porygon. And that's going to be my game plan throughout. So my opponent leads off with Whimsicott Charizard into my Charizard Grimmsnarl. So this is good for multiple reasons. 1, he knows I have Rockfall, which means his Charizard isn't safe. 2, he's exerting very little pressure onto my own Charizard. All he can really do is Airstream. So I'm free to max and start Airstreaming away to potentially try to catch up to his Airstreams or Tailwinds, or just to do big damage to Whimsicott. My opponent actually opts to switch into Clefairy, which is incredible for me, because that means turn 1, all he was exerting was Whimsicott pressure, which was very negligible here, and on turn 2, he has a Clefairy and a Whimsicott versus a Charizard. So that means he has basically given and forfeited 2 turns of the battle, and I'm in complete control for those 2 turns. If you give a good player like me 2 turns of a battle, I just don't think you're gonna win. I'm just doing tons of damage here. I'm basically almost getting 2 KOs. Clefairy does hang on, but next turn it will die to Wildfire for an Icy Wind and a Tailwind. Speed control is not such a huge deal for my team either, because I've got those big, juicy screens. So I'm just sitting here chilling, watching the sunset, watching Clefairy burn up to Wildfire, just knowing I'm in an incredible spot. Obviously on this turn, it kind of sucks because Venusaur does move first and connects with Sleep Powder. So I do go to sleep, but at this point, I've secured 2 KOs with Wildfire. I've set up Light Screen against 2 special attackers in the back, and I still got 1 more turn of Wildfire. 2 more turns of Wildfire, might be. So Venusaur is going to be suffering here, and now at this point, they're forced to max Charizard, but it's too late. They don't have Rockfall, they don't have any cool techs, and at this point, Porygon just wins if I can get to that position. Obviously, I will have to navigate through these silly sleeps, but like, it's not a huge deal just because I have a ton of bulk with Light Screen. My opponent would have to crit the ever-living shit out of me to even have a chance here, and that doesn't happen. So, they do KO Grimmsnarl, which is fine. I would have just got free Spirit Breaks off. But at this point, again, it's not a huge deal. I just need Porygon to eventually wake up and set up Trick Room. So, I send in Porygon here, get that nice little attack boost, which is completely worthless. And I just hang on for the ride. Honestly, Charizard takes way more than I would have expected from the Airstream there, but I mean, that's Life Orb Charizard for you. It hits like a truck. Venusaur does connect with Sleep Powder, which I'm so far ahead that these don't matter at all. I'm just chilling, I'm sleeping. I do wake up there and get the KO on a Venusaur. So now once Porygon does wake up, it's permanent. I'm never going back to sleep, and I'm just gonna spam Eerie Impulses until I win, basically. Wildfire comes through on Charizard, but Charizard's still hanging on. So now I get to show off my cool, awesome Ancient Power tech. It does huge damage to Charizard, but doesn't get the KO. And then P2 does wake up here, sets up Trick Room for my Groudon in the back, and I secured the game 1. I think this game ultimately was just like the turn 1 and 2 was just so in my favor that like I legitimately couldn't lose unless like I said, I got crit to infinity. So I was really proud of that one, and I'm really happy to win that game going into the tour. So in team preview, I auto-locked that shit, run it back once again. I'm following the same game plan. It worked in game 1, why can't it work in game 2? My opponent does adapt here and goes for a Thundurus Whimsicott lead. So I think Thundurus is actually pretty good versus my team as long as I'm playing well, I can deal with it, but if I mess up a little bit, Thundurus can easily start to snowball and take over. So on turn 1, I decide to defensively keep my Charizard alive because Charizard is good versus almost everything on their team. So as long as Charizard's chilling, I'm chilling. So they turn 1 max, which is completely fine by me, just because Groudon is a freaking god, and if I just sit here and chill, I won't lose the game just because they actually can't get any KOs. Grimmsnarl obviously takes both the Moonblast and the Airstream just completely fine. Sitting pretty. All I really need to do is get both screens up here, and I should be able to take over the game because I've stalled already 2 turns of their max minimum. Grimmsnarl does go down to a Moonblast, which, you know, it's expected, but it's still a great situation. They actually go for Max Darkness here to lower my Groudon special defense for like future Venusaur or Whimsicott hits, but I'm shrugging it off. I set up that Swords Dance, and now I'm ready to go. I got a Groudon, sorry, at +2. I've got a Charizard in the back, and I have a Porygon too. I also do know, this is really important, my opponent doesn't have Taunt on Whimsicott. So, I'm free to just press the Trick Room button here with no remorse. They double tap Groudon once again, but Groudon, look at this guy. He just doesn't care. He's eating up these attacks left and right. Now he's gonna fire off a giant, big, juicy Rockfall, getting a KO onto Thundurus, and also breaking the sash on Whimsicott. At this point in the game, I have my max, 2 turns left, a +2 Groudon, and they have a Whimsicott and like a Groudon Venusaur. So like I'm totally fine in the situation. I have speed control. I have Porygon. There's nothing they can do. They don't even have an Ice Resist. They have 3 Ice Weeks right now, and no Ice Resist. So I'm just chilling in this situation. Ice Beam comes through onto Whimsicott. Whimsicott actually lives, which is kind of surprising, but that's okay. I take the P-Blades with ease, and I basically almost get a KO on a Groudon, but he hangs on with 1 HP, so a mild annoyance, because I do want to make the most of my Trick Room turns, but at this point, the damage has been done. My Groudon is too big. My Porygon now has a max Quake boost, so Venusaur and Whimsicott are going to struggle to kill it as well. So I'm able to just grab the KO on the Groudon here, grab the KO on the Whimsicott, and now Venusaur is looking at a 1v3 with a Porygon and a Charizard involved, I don't think you want to be the Venusaur here. I really don't. The sand gets set up just, just in case. I want Charizard to outspeed outside of Trick Room, so Rockfall's technically a little more optimal there. It's not a huge deal. Now all I gotta do is hit some P-Blades and we'll be able to sip our coffee in peace and relax as we get ready for round 2. I do miss Rock Slide here, but again, it didn't matter at all. Leaf Storm connects, Groudon goes down, but it's too late. It's too late. The Duck of Judgment has arrived, and Venusaur is its next victim. Charizard comes in, we're chilling. Ice Beam comes through. Dead Venusaur. And that is a 1-0 victory for me. I won round 1, which I was really, really happy about. Because in the last Players' Cup, I actually went 0-2 and didn't win a single game. So this is the furthest I've been in any Players' Cup. And I'm not going to lie, I was really happy I was able to pull off this win. Round 1s are always really, really scary in tournaments. You never know what to expect. I felt in control throughout. So I was just really, really proud of my round 1. So Audie is a very, very controlled player. He's very calculating, he's very cunning, but he's very, very straightforward and effective in his play. I think that's a good way to describe him. So to get past the robotic effectiveness of his controlled playstyle, I decided to lead something that would really, really throw him off guard and would put a lot of pressure and a lot of mind games on him. So I decided to lead with Groudon Venusaur. I'm threatening a potential Max Rockfall, I'm threatening a potential Sleep Powder, and I'm just putting a lot of potential pressure on him brain-wise, if you will. So this lead, I could potentially Sleep Powder, I could Rockfall. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a lot of things he has to react to. So this was the lead I expected, which is Charizard Grimmsnarl. So game 1, I decided to go with a crazy, crazy gambit of leaving the Venusaur in to the Charizard. So I know he has Scary Face. The entire point of this team is to one-shot the Venusaur in Sun on turn 1. And so he does just go for the Scary Face and the Wildfire into Venusaur. I thought, maybe he doesn't cover for that play. Maybe he gives me the chance of putting him to sleep and where I'd be able to just take the game in. I think this play was actually just kind of wrong, though. I should have went for Sleep Powder plus Rockfall to guarantee the KO, but I go for the regular Rock Slide, which does never gets the KO. So from right there, I'm kind of in a bad spot. I kind of just banked the game all on turn 1, which, is never the smartest idea. But it's what I did just because I think Audie is a really respectable player, and I wanted to try to shake him in game 1, because if I did win this game, mentally, I don't know if he would have been able to come back from this, just because I would have been playing confidently, and he would have just been very mad about my silly turn 1 that I was able to pull off. So I kind of banked the game on that. I do read him correctly here and do protect my Groudon on turn 2 to try and get myself back into the game, but sadly, Charizard hangs on with 1 HP there. It was really, really clutch. Well, it's going to be 1 HP after the Solar Power. It was really, really clutch survive there, and I think the game could have been winnable, but again, I kind of just threw this game to that turn 1, which, I mean, I'm not really that mad about, just because I did choose to do that, and I knew this was a potential outcome. So at this point, I'm just kind of scrambling, trying to figure out a way back into this game. There's not much I can do, especially after this really, really solid play from Audie here, where he hits me with this fat, juicy Rockfall to weaken my Charizard, to weaken my damage, and also survive the turn with his Grimmsnarl. It was just very, very clutch. I think Audie played incredibly well, and he played really systematically and really, really straightforwardly. I think he didn't leave, once I gave him that lead on that turn 1, he didn't hold back, and he basically just took control of the game completely. I think I really wish I could have played Audie again, because I think it would have been quite a banger of a set. Obviously, I don't want to play Audie because I do want him to qualify, and I want to qualify, and if we play each other, we can't do that. But I do think it would have been a banger of a best of 3 considering how this one went. I wish I gave him a better game, especially this game 1. It was just kind of pitiful. But, there's nothing wrong with that. I think losing to a player like Audie is always, much better than losing to someone that you, get hacked out by, just because Audie's a really respectable player, so there's oh, I lost to a good player. That's totally fine by me. I'm basically scrambling at this point to try and do something. I go for a Flare Blitz burn here, but Venusaur's Judgment will be swift, and it's just a matter of time until Venusaur comes in there. I would have to dodge all the P-Blades in the worlds to potentially win this game, which is just not gonna happen. So yeah, I think Audie just closes this game out well. But I really do wish I could have shown him more of a game, especially this game 1. It was just, I risked it all on turn 1. I came up short. That's really the description of this game. I do want to show the whole game in its entirety, just because, it feels honorable to do so, and I want to showcase the run in its entirety as well. But Audie does take a swift game 1, and that's fine. So going into game 2, I need to make an adjustment, right? I need to do something, I need to play better, and I need to not let what happened happen. So what I decided to do is lead the exact same thing, but potentially mix it up on him if he decides to lead the same thing. Audie, being the player that he is, completely changes up with a Charizard Venusaur lead. So this lead is really, really good, and it basically counters what I'm doing here. Again, this turn 1 is so bad for me. Like, this set really shook me, and like it kind of showed me that I wasn't ready for this tournament yet, and I needed to play better if I wanted a chance of winning. Audie was ready, and he was playing well. So I risk it all on the Sleep Powder turn 1. I Sleep Powder the Charizard and max my Groudon to try and KO, I believe, the Incin with Rockfall, but that doesn't happen. I get put to sleep, so now my Max is sleeping, and now he's freely allowed to max his Venusaur with no repercussions whatsoever. So again, I kind of just risked both games on a turn 1 Gambit that just went completely out of my favor because Audie played really, really well and basically countered my Gambit completely. So Venusaur is going to max here, and I mean, at this point it's too late. The Vine Lash is so free onto my Groudon. Even if Groudon gets this free first turn Wake, like, which I get, it's still kind of doomed here because Venusaur's in such a good spot. I max quick the Venusaur for a good chunk. I need to start doing damage to it, but again, I just risked it all on turn 1. And I think this battle is really, really important to my run and really important to the story of the run because it really woke me up and it said, hey Colin, you're 0-1 now. This is a double elimination tournament. If you lose, your tournament runs over completely and you're going to go 1-2 this time. What are you going to tell your fans? What are you going to tell your mom, dude? You got to win something. You got to win more than one game. So I think this battle was really important just because I did wake up after this and I didn't want to get eliminated. When the back's against the wall, sometimes there's just something about that feeling of being back against the wall. All the pressure's on. If you lose, you're done for. And some people thrive under the pressure. Some people eat dirt when they're under that pressure. But I definitely was able to really shake it off, and I knew I had to play like 14 games after this. I think it was 13 more matches now because I lost on round 2, which means I had to play, I believe, the maximum amount of games that you can play outside of, I think I'm missing 1 game. So this tournament was going to be very, very difficult. Here's a really sick play from Audie. He actually rock falls my Charizard. This game was over on turn 1, so I was just kind of talking over it. But it's important to note that I think this game really pushed me forward mentally, and like Audie played well, and if I wanted to catch up to Audie in this tournament, I was gonna have to play much better than what I was doing for this game here, specifically against Audie. Venusaur versus the world. Can Venusaur do it? The answer is no. I do get a Sleep Powder off on a Groudon, which is, I guess, kind of cool. But then Earth Power comes through, and my poor Venusaur can't handle the onslaught, and I decide to hit forfeit after this one. I do think losing to Audie is always a good thing. I'd rather lose to this than Hacks, and it just allows my mental state to be in a much better place. And I think Pokemon is like 90% mentality most of the time. And from here on out in the tour, I decided to give it my all, and I'm sitting at 1-1, which means that if I lose another game in this tour, I'm completely out of the tournament. So it's gaming time. I can't lose. I literally can't lose a set. Otherwise it's over. And I have this mindset throughout the entire run of just not losing a set. And it's just exhilarating. There's nothing like the thrill of competition and the thrill of risking it all every single game. If you lose, you're done. And that's the story of my run. So looking at this matchup, I was so afraid of Ho-Oh. So going into a restricted matchup like this, like Groudon versus Ho-Oh or Sun versus Ho-Oh, it's always like nightmarish because some people run the more obscure legends, such as Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh's not a bad legend, but it's very, very good at specific matchups and it's very, very bad in others. One of the matchups it's very good in is Sun. So this matchup is horrifying to me. This Raichu is horrifying. It has Eerie Impulse, it has Nuzzle, it has Charm. So no matter what attacker I'm using against this team, Raichu is going to cause me problems. So I start right off the bat. I make a really, really risky play of switching Groudon into a Sacred Fire. It really was quite a bad play, honestly. And if I got burned, I was going to get burned and this game was probably over. I maxed Groudon here to try and put some tempo and pressure onto my opponent. I need to get ahead here. I need to take down this Ho-Oh. I need to do damage to it. So I decided to Scary Face Raichu to slow it down so I don't get charmed. and then Rockfall Ho-Oh for the big damage, right? So this turn goes okay. This battle is already feeling like I'm losing, though. My opponent has a Ho-Oh, it has Regenerator, it has Weakness Policy here. If it wanted to max, it could. But it also has Regenerator, so it can just switch around and be a nuisance later because I've already committed my max. So that's not good. So the situation is just getting worse and worse. I'm charmed as well on my max. So I decided to Scary Face Ho-Oh and max click the Raichu. I need to get rid of Raichu as soon as possible. Getting KOs is really important here. And one thing that's really important in this matchup here is actually Ancient Power Charizard. My Charizard actually has a way to hit Ho-Oh, which normally my Pokemon don't. I do get burned here, which is rather unfortunate, but I mean, I took 2 Sacred Fires. I can't really be mad. 2 Sacred Fires, I'm bound to get burned on one of them. I'm just lucky I didn't get burned on the first one. So there's that. I think this is where my opponent messes up a little bit. I think this is where the tide swings in my favor. The Serena max, while not a horrible max in this situation, I think situationally the max is totally fine and totally valid. It's putting pressure on my Groudon. It's a solid max. But I think for the outcome of the battle, my opponent was better off maxing the Ho-Oh. I take that max overgrowth like a champ. Honestly, like a champ. Groudon's defense is killer. I'm trying to do as much damage as I can to Serena at this point, but Groudon taking that overgrowth was huge. Ho-Oh now has to switch out. There's a ton of pressure from Groudon. I have Scary Face pressure. There's a lot of good going on in this game. I think if my opponent played more conservatively with their max and just maxed their Ho-Oh in the endgame after a Regenerator, I might not have been able to come back for it. And I do think that, you know, this max is what really changes the tide here, though. Hailstorm gets set up, which is actually not horrible because I do have Weather Ball on my Venu, so I can now hit Serena with a super effective Weather Ball, potentially in the future. But I think the Serena max just doesn't do enough damage behind Reflect. I think Serena's damage isn't the greatest, and let alone when Reflect's up. Reflect is actually just really clutch. I felt like a lot of my games just came down to me overwhelming my opponents with really strong Reflects, and just the pure bulk of my team is incredible. So I'd just be able to sit there and live forever. The Yawn Spam here is going to get kind of annoying, but my opponent does opt to switch it out here. I think what's important to note as well, by the way, this Serena is not Queenly Majesty, which is why I'm able to Scary Face it and make plays. It's actually Sweet Veil, which means I can't put anything to sleep. So before I put the Ho-Oh to sleep, or before I put Umbreon to sleep, I have to get the KO on Serena. It's really important to note because it changes the way the matchup's viewed completely here. I go for the Ancient Power. I need to put pressure on Ho-Oh throughout the battle. And I really thought Weather Ball would like probably KO Serena here, but the Assault Vest is making it really tanky. I think this battle was actually like really close. You'll see in a sec, it gets pretty close here. This was the turn that, you know, it wasn't really a big read. It was just a rather safe play. Air Slash the Serena and hope that I'm fast in Ho-Oh or some miracle can happen that I can actually put Ho-Oh to sleep. I need to make sure that Serena is KO'd. I actually do miss Sleep Powder there, which was rather unfortunate. The game wouldn't be as close if the Sleep Powder had connected, but Charizard lives with 1 and the Hail stops. That was the clutchest moment of the entire battle, and it's ultimately what leads to my victory here. Charizard just barely does enough damage to KO Ho-Oh here. Actually, no, sorry. It doesn't do enough damage, but the Brave Bird recoil actually KOs Ho-Oh. And, oh my gosh, this game was so close. This game is so close. If the Sleep Powders don't go my way, if I miss another one, like, it's just doomed. If Charizard got 1 HP hit stronger, I would have lost. So this game was really close, but I think ultimately it was just like my opponent should have maxed Ho-Oh, and I'm glad they didn't. But I think the Ho-Oh max would have given me much more trouble. And, you know, that's something I have to consider going into game 2. I think I also played Groudon pretty poorly as well throughout the game. It got burned. I kind of played way too aggressive with my Groudon. So I was a little bad at myself, but really happy I took the game 1. Because I was able to adjust and think what I wanted to do in game 2 while having a game up. I really shouldn't have won that game. There was rolls, there was sleep, there was a bad Groudon play. I shouldn't have won that game. And now, hey, I'm given a second chance. I now just need to win 1 game. And my tournament life remains intact if I just play a little bit better. So I got bailed a little bit by that roll onto Charizard. Like, Charizard just clutched it for me. Shoutouts to Charizard. But knowing that, I think my opponent will also probably max Ho-Oh and give me more pressure from the Ho-Oh slot this time around. So they actually completely change it up though. Lapras plus Raichu. This was a big part of why I led Venusaur in game 1. I wanted to always put pressure on Lapras, so I led Lapras. I led Venusaur in game 1. I'm gonna lead Venusaur in game 2. I want to keep Venusaur on. I want to keep Lapras honest, and I don't want those screens going up without a fight, right? So my turn 1 is actually rather uneventful here. I start to take over the game pretty quickly though, because my opponent actually fakes out Grimmsnarl, which, you know, makes sense. I max my Venusaur, right? But I'm able to dodge all Eerie Impulses here. I hit Divine Lash on Serena, which isn't a big deal. It doesn't really matter. What's important is the vines are up. So now the Raichu Sash is broken, and my opponent opts to max Serena again, which is just completely catching me off guard here. I think it's better this time around just because I am putting a ton of pressure on. But I think the tempo match here is actually just benefiting me because now I'm able to take these hits with Venusaur while maxed, when I might not have been able to take these hits later in the game if my max had gotten stalled. So again, I think it is benefiting me, and I'm really happy to see the max Serena here. Overgrowth does a good chunk to Grimmsnarl. Remember, I have no screens at this point, but Grimmsnarl hangs on. The tankiest little goblin I've ever seen. And now it's a good situation for me. I have grassy terrain. I have a Grimmsnarl that gets one screen. Life's good. I actually make a nice little read here. I go for the max strike on the Ho-Oh to do as much damage as possible. It was really obvious for me to max Overgrowth Lapras. So I thought, hey, let's get some speed control. Let's slow Ho-Oh down so I know Groudon can outspeed it later and potentially press Rock Slides, because that's my best way to hit this Ho-Oh. And my opponent actually goes for the smart play of Flutterby, which is honestly a super, super strong max move that I don't think we see enough of. But it's off of U-turn, it grabs the KO. It was the perfect move they could have pressed there. It weakens my Venusaur, and it kills my Grimmsnarl. A nice 2-for-1 there. I set up the Drought here though. At this point, I'm a baby Venusaur again, but I feel really, really good about this situation just because I can deal with a baby Lapras with no screens and a Ho-Oh, even with the Regenerator here. So Lapras obviously is going to come back in. They're just trying to stall these couple turns here. Weather Ball actually does like no damage. I am at -1, but it does no damage. And then there is a Hailstorm proc, but Venusaur takes that so well. I think Serena just isn't doing enough damage behind my Reflect, and I just kind of get to take the victory because my opponent can't get through my Reflect. I think that's ultimately what it was, is Max Serena does not do well versus Reflect, and I just got to coast with my Venusaur here. This Serena actually like takes no damage though. It's like kind of nuts. I go for the double tap on the Serena, and it does go down here because I am at +1 from the weakness policy boost. And we're just going to trade Serena for Venusaur, but at this point, it's all good. That's all I need to do. Groudon and Charizard can take care of the Ho-Oh later, and I have Solar Beam Charizard. I was not intending to be Solar Beam Charizard, but in this specific scenario, Solar Beam is quite clutch because it threatens the KO onto Lapras as well. So Solar Beam does come up here. I believe this is like the best time I used it throughout the tournament. Again, it was supposed to be Scorching Sands, but this is like the big turn for Solar Beam. This is Solar Beam's biggest play. Boom! Solar Beam Charizard, ladies and gentlemen. It grabs the KO on the Lapras, securing the dub for me. Groudon was always just faster than Ho-Oh, so a single target Rock Slide does pick up the KO. I think I probably would have been fine if that had not been Solar Beam, but we take the game anyways. And I 2-0'd my opponent. That game felt really good to win, just because, you know, I'm now 2-1. I feel a little bit better about myself. I'm positive, but my tournament life is always still on the line here. But beating an opponent, especially in a matchup that seems quite difficult, like Ho-Oh plus Lapras, does feel pretty good, and my mental is feeling good. But, unfortunately, the way double elimination works, I ended up having to wait an entire hour between that round and this round. I waited for 60 minutes just sitting there. I actually tweeted out at 45 minutes like that I was waiting, and I just sat there. It completely killed my vibe, and I just kind of lost my determination to play. Like I was just really, really out of it and not mentally super hyper focused in as I was during those first 3 sets because they were back to back. So with that in mind, let's go into round 3. So against this team, I felt extremely confident. It's open team sheet, so I was able to see all the tricks and all the moves, and I noticed something right away. My opponent cannot beat Charizard plus Incineroar lead. They have 1 Fire Resist in Torkoal, and they have 3 Fire Weaks, sorry. So Incin plus Charizard just completely takes over the game. And I just felt extremely confident here. I thought the game was won just in the team building phase because Charizard is just so good here. Charizard plus Instant just puts on so much pressure. It stops Speed Swap. It stops Trick Room. Even if Trick Room goes up, who cares? Because I intimidated the Calyrex. So it's just so good for me. This is the kind of matchup I was ready for anyways with normal Calyrex stuff. But this is like Calyrex just weak to Charizard. So I was just extremely confident here. I thought Fake Out plus Airstream is the safest play in the game. And I legit couldn't be punished. So I was just always going to make this play. And I think it works out spectacularly here. My opponent actually doesn't opt for Trick Room, because if they did opt for Trick Room, I could potentially have just double fire moved, and it would have been a pretty bad turn for them. So they decide to max, which is totally fine with me. I'm just putting on too much pressure here. I get this free little Fake Out on the Clefairy, and I get this free Airstream. This is free damage on the Clefairy, which is awesome. And now for the rest of the game, my Charizard will also outspeed Pheromosa, which is huge in this matchup, just because I can stop Speed Swap shenanigans. I don't even really care about Speed Swap, because I have Reflect, I have Intimidate. This thing's already at -1. So it's not a huge deal if they do get the Speed Swap off, but it's just even better, you know? Like, I can now deter that if I really wanted to. So right here, I do get a little lucky. I go for the max fire, the wildfire there, and it does crit, but I'm not sure if that mattered. It did about that damage before. It would have died to wildfire, but I wouldn't have gotten off this free parting shot. But this situation is still amazing for me. Like, it's even better now, because I was gonna live the max hailstorm, but now I live the max hailstorm comfortably. It doesn't actually change anything of the game outside of the Calyrex is at -2 instead of -1, and ultimately that's not going to matter at all, because it's never going to even come close to getting a KO into anything anyways. So Calyrex is actually going to switch out here, which I guess maybe it might not have if the crit didn't happen, but it does switch out into Indeedee. And now I'm just going to go for a good old wildfire, kill the little skill swap guy, make sure that wildfire's cooking the damage. Big damage fire move here. Indeedee showing its Psychic Seed. Again, not a huge deal. All these Pokemon lose to Incineroar. Whenever you get to play against a team that's weak to Incineroar, it just feels so good to have the little cat. Like, it's so good. This team is so weak to fire types. Torkoal's their only fire resist, so Charizard and Torkoal are just destroying families here. Triple Axle comes through. Charizard just eats it up, honestly. Like, that's pretty good, all things considered. But now the Hail's going to grab Charizard, so we give Charizard a little salute as he returns to his Pokeball. But at this point, I still have 2 other Pokemon in the back, and one of those Pokemon is Incineroar. So now this Intimidate is permanent. Their Calyrex is always going to be at -1, unless I proc some weakness policy. But that's not a big deal. And I still have another whole Pokemon in the back in Groudon. I also have Reflect. Like, this situation is just so good. It just keeps getting better here. So Indeedee's going to press Follow Me. I'm going to go for Parting Shot. I obviously want to hit Calyrex, but it's not a big deal just because I want more Intimidates anyways. At this point, Incineroar can probably win the game by itself, especially with the Sun support. So I'm not stressing too much here. I have Reflect up, so I just go for Spirit Break into Indeedee to do as much damage as possible. I'm just trying to wear my opponent down. The game has already been won at this point, barring some crazy crits. But even if there was a crit onto that Groudon there, I probably would still win with Incineroar just due to Intimidate and due to having the Sun up now with the Wildfire damage. Like, Incineroar's just checkmating here, and life's good. I don't even have to be too worried about crits or any sort of hacks. Like, it's just so good. So I'm gonna get another Intimidate down. Like, my opponent is just being bogged down by these Intimidates. It's just not even fair anymore. Like, Calyrex is doing no damage. They try to read the instant coming into that slot, but no dice. He went in on the Groudon slot. The Wildfire is still doing big damage as well. So it's just a matter of time until Incineroar rains down his judgment upon my opponent. I finally grabbed the KO into Indeedee. And at this point now, I believe the Calyrex is probably in Precipice Blade range. So, probably not. I'd have to do like a Spirit Break plus a Precipice Blades. But that's okay. We're still chilling. They try to read the Groudon coming back in, but I didn't do it. I didn't bring him in. And Incineroar can easily grab this KO with Flare Blitz onto the Calyrex. There's nothing my opponent can do. So, going into Game 2, I'm feeling so confident. Like, my game plan worked. Charizard plus Incineroar just seems unbeatable for my opponent. It just seems like an oversight to them. They just did not expect Charizard paired with Incin, and I'm just going to abuse that, simply put. It's good versus Sun, it's good versus Trick Room, it's good versus Pheromosa. The lead is just godlike, so I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to bring Groudon again. It just makes sense to me. Groudon is really, really positive here. I need the Sun as well. It's also good versus Torkoal, the one fire resist on the team, so the Fire Boys can deal with the rest of them as long as I get rid of that Torkoal. So we're going to see a Venusaur Torkoal lead, which is fine by me. So I decide, you know what, it's turn 1, I'm feeling way ahead in the game, so I'm going to make a little bit of a risky play. I also assume my opponent is, like most opponents don't go for the Sleep Powder turn 1, just from the fear of Fake Out. So they decide to max Venusaur here, so I decide to hit Venusaur with the double fire move extravaganza. So this play covers for if they went for, you know, Sleep Powder, because Charizard would not burn a turn of max, and I would still KO the Venusaur with Flare Blitz. So that situation is covered, and it's just a good turn. I get a Heat Wave, I do big damage to both, and I Flare Blitz, grab the KO on a Venusaur. At this point, the game is over. I've killed their max. Both my fire guys are relatively healthy here. I mean, well, sorry. Charizard is, at least. Charizard's at around half from this eruption, and Instant hangs on with 4 HP. They don't have Vine Lash. They do have a special attack boost onto Torkoal, but it's too late. The power of fire moves are going to take over this game. So Torkoal can switch out into Clefairy, but it's too late. The judgment of Charizard is swift, and all he has to do is press this max Wildfire on the Calyrex, and the game is over. I just won on turn 1. They risked the game on a, I guess, I'm not sure what they were fully accomplishing there, just because Instant was always going to do big damage there, and like even if I Wildfire, they were just going to get a max use for a KO. So like, I'm not sure what was going on there, but I was able to just take over the game at this point. Instant does feint to recoil, but I thought I had a relatively safe play. It accounted for Sleep Powder. It accounted for basically everything my opponent could do. And we take game 2 very, very swiftly. Now at this point in the tour, I'm 3-1, which is pretty solid. 3-1 is okay, but there's still a lot of games left to be played, and if I lose a single game throughout the run, I'm out of the tournament. I lose. I can't continue on. So, after beating Night Guard, I feel confident, but I know there's a lot of Pokemon left to be played. Will I be able to prevail? You'll have to find out next time on Players Cup 3, Sun Edition.